Welcome to Surgeon Syndicate. If you're paying attention, you know that you only make money when you work. It might be great money, but it's dependent on you. The information on this podcast will help you solve that. We interview experts and provide analysis into financial freedom through commercial real estate. Why? To help physicians like you thrive. Let's dive in.
Welcome to Surgeon Syndicate. This is your host, Dr. Michael McManus, and we are here today with Eric Burns of Flowers Capital. Eric, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me on, Dr. McManus. It's really a pleasure to be here with you. So thank you.
Oh, great to have you here. So let's get started. Often our listeners like the backstory first. That's the human connection before we get dive too deep into real estate. So tell us a little bit more about your background and what brings you here today.
Yeah, thank you. So I guess kind of like we kind of both had some interesting pivots along the way. Uh, Grew up in Cincinnati, Ohio, where I still reside. Yeah, great town, and yeah, I wish it was warmer, but I do love it here, so that's good stuff. Went to Wyoming High School in town, and then Miami University in Oxford, Ohio, and I left there with a finance major and ambitions of starting my own company, and worked as a mortgage broker for a short time, and the hard selling was not working for me, and then did some remodeling work and found my way into the Cincinnati Fire Department. Spent 17 years there, retired as a fire lieutenant. So there was some interesting leadership skills acquired there. Definitely built up a lot of my character traits that I'm proud of today. So during that time, I did the side hustle thing. I had a little business here and there, and they never took off. I could never get the hang of it. And then I thought, well, I'll get into real estate. And it was a big leap for me at the time. I knew how to do math and things like that, and I knew how to run, and I had done enough research to kind of look into it and say, okay, the numbers are right. So I get the keys to this single family college housing unit in 2013 and realize I have no idea how to be a landlord. The deal was good, but the landlording I had to figure out. And I did, and it went okay. So, so continuing at the fire department, I started taking on some duplex renovations, and then I'd kind of flip them and rent them out and did that thing, and um, learned so much about, well, holding costs for one was a very hard lesson to learn on my first one. Uh, Estimating costs, all those sort of skills that just kind of naturally come when you're there in the grind, and um, ended up getting burned by a contractor, which was not great. But really, it was kind of mid renovation at one point. I realized how much time am I spending over here, um, doing tile and doing all this stuff and hours, and my goal has always been to start a company, but to get financial freedom and find that purpose, and find ways to impact and grow with people that matter in your life. So I'm sitting there and my hands are bloody and I'm just worn out, and I'd been at the firehouse for 24 hours, and I thought to myself, I'm still only trading my time for money. And it was just kind of a coincidence. Fell into my next life pivot and started, and I had been reading up. I just kind of always read, and I found a Michael Blanc book shortly followed after a Joe Fairless Best Ever book. So I'd been interested in commercial real estate, and I leaned into that. Shortly after that, I ended up liquidating, selling off my residential stuff. Thankfully, market was timed well, and I bought them at such deep discounts and things like that. So I did well on them, and I was pleased with that. But without the scalability and the freedom of time is really what I was after. And I didn't know it at the time. I just knew I couldn't scale at that. So got into commercial real estate, started sourcing deals for a while. And I look around, and and it speaks to the power of community through masterminds and just surrounding yourself with ambitious and like-minded people. I had great operators in my network, and they're getting amazing deals, and they're saying, "Hey, join us and raise capital for our deals." So I look around, and next thing I know, I have great operators in multiple commercial real estate asset classes, and they're just good people to work with. They're encouraging. So I just found myself in a position where I had great partners, a great product. I get excited about financial freedom. It should be fun. Um, and that's kind of the service Flowers Capital provides is taking private equity. We'll place it in some great deals with great operators vetted. The underwriting is usually very conservative with the people we work with. And that's not a blanket term that is you often hear the term conservative underwriting, but there are definitely certain metrics that I look at that are large leverage points, and we just aren't looking at these huge rent increases and things like that. So, yeah, the great sponsors, great deals, tight underwriting, a lot to be excited about. And so that's kind of where I landed. Was right there in that commercial real estate sector, and it turns out I love it, and just a neat space and a lot of potential for a lot of people. Yeah.
So going back a little bit, so I've run into quite a few firefighters who are involved in real estate. What is it about firefighters that kind of this is part not an uncommon path?
Well, part of it is the schedule. So we like our now that differs around the country, but fairly normal around us would be a 24-hour on. We have 48 hours off. So we do our 48 hours over the course of 2 days, and we have 2 days off. And say, hey, why not start a grass business? Why not start a commercial construction company, which I did one time that again, lessons learned, fail forward. That's kind of my thing. So, um, but the time for one, and a lot of guys are just into projects, into working with their hands and that kind of stuff. So it's usually a good fit. And once one guy gets a good idea at the firehouse, it's a good idea for all of us, right? Like we're definitely a monkey see, monkey do crowd. So. Yeah, I think
Spreads like
that's
a
why.
cold.
Yeah, yeah.
That's interesting. I was talking to somebody just the other day, was a doctor, and he was talking back. He goes, "Yeah, I just went to a reunion, and I caught up with one of his good buddies from high school, and he had lost touch with him, I don't know, 5 or 10 years after high school. But the buddy had gone to fire school,
Mm-hmm.
the fire academy, shortly after high school." And he remembered like watching him for like while he was going to college. And by the time he graduated college, his buddy owned a house and an investment property. And by the time he finished medical school, his buddy owned like 3 apartment buildings. And by the time he finished residency, his buddy was working part-time at the firehouse. And
Mm-hmm.
he was like, man, uh, he's like, I don't think I can ever catch up with the guy who became a fireman right out of high school. What percentage of firefighters, because you were a college grad, you became you had a degree and then went into it. What's kind of the mix you see with firefighters? Is it both, or is there kind of a more people that didn't go to college or did?
Yeah, there's a large representation of both. And actually, college degrees are not uncommon. Military service is very common too. So usually one of those
Oh,
two
okay.
routes is kind of what you find. And actually, coincidentally enough, speaking of life pivots, I worked with a young guy that went to med school. He actually ended up getting into University of Cincinnati. He loved the paramedic stuff, which is so interesting. Medicine's so interesting. But I actually can't do the needles. I don't like needles. Yeah, so
Oh,
I just did the
so you couldn't
report
be the
usually.
paramedic.
Yeah. I let the good, the good paramedics do that, right? But yeah, just the whole medical scene aspect was so fascinating. But yeah, it's kind of a representation of both. And most guys are out building stuff or doing house projects anyway. So jumping into real estate is a really natural kind of course for us to take. Um, and then regarding the young guy, good for him. Good for that young guy. Because I wish I would have done stuff like that when I was first hired, as when I was young. And oh man, getting into residential rentals as young guy is a really powerful thing to start building equity early, start compounding early. My path was a little different. I'm always kind of now a lot of my time and money was spent on personal development, and every time one of these side hustles didn't pan out, I learned a little bit. I always just learned a little bit to take the next uncomfortable step and see where I land. And you just keep learning. And then next thing you know, you land in a sector where you just really like it and it's a good fit. And you kind of realize life had built up to this point, all these kind of pivots and learning lessons. And it's a neat space to get into, partly because uh, there's so much potential, but also it's accessible to a lot of people that maybe don't even realize it. And such a powerful tool.
That's interesting when you talk about the falling forward and all the different things you did. Um, and maybe there's the difference when you look at the firehouse versus doctors, because I kind of saw it was almost like the opposite environment amongst doctors, that we're just supposed to do one thing. And when a doc kind of goes out of line, um, they can be chastised for it, whether it's directly or indirectly, like, oh, they're doing this other thing. They're not committed to being a doctor. And,
Yeah.
and maybe that's the difference at the firehouses because of the schedule you work. Sounds like there's a lot of guys kind of doing some things out there. And maybe if you see the people around you trying something new and failing, and trying something else new and failing, and trying something else new, where I see a lot of docs, they try something new, and if it works, and now that decreases their dependence on being a doctor, half the medical staff is like, oh, they're not committed anymore. They're doing real estate. Um, or it doesn't work, and everybody's like, see, bad idea. You should just stick with being a doctor.
Yeah. Yeah.
See the way it
Oh,
goes.
the
It's
naysayers. Yeah, for sure. I
it's
think it's a
it's
hundred percent. And real estate can be so passive. Commercial real estate can be so passive through the limited partnership investment. Um, and it's just it's basically just a pass. You return. You probably get a quarterly preferred return on top of the splits at exit, and it's a great way to just get in and not aside from the upfront decision making and underwriting, um it really is one of the most passive forms of sources of income you can get, and which is great even if you're not a doctor looking to leave your practice or leave your position. um the power of making your money work for you, and then add the compounding, which whatever the Einstein quote was, the eighth wonder of the world, which I heard wasn't 100% verified he said that, but it is so true. Compounding is so powerful. And to have passive sources of income and really ensure your retirement is going to be one where you have freedom of time. And doctors know probably more than most people how valuable time really is. And even if you don't make the transition full time into real estate, being able to tap into some passive sources of income is hugely powerful. Um, and a lot easier than people may realize too.
and that passive flow. I was just on a meeting with my wealth planner, and we were looking at these doctor numbers that over half of doctors now report some form of burnout. And
Mm.
depending on, if you just ask them, are you burnt out? The numbers go a little lower. But if you do some of the ones that show symptoms of burnout, the numbers actually, I've seen numbers higher than that. But it's I think even for docs, if you love it every day, I mean, if you're like, if you feel like I remember there was a Billy Joe Armstrong from Green Day. Um, I divert off somewhere else, but it was like it was in like Guitar Magazine, and he had just turned 40. And they asked him, they're like, well, how's it turning 40? He says, well, it's really confusing because uh, on one side, I do the same thing I've been doing since I was 8 years old. I get up, I hang out with my best friend, who one of the band members is his best friend from childhood. I hang out with my best friend and I play my guitar and act like a child. He goes, but now I'm 40 and I have my own kids. So I guess that means I'm an adult. So so I act like so part of life tells me I'm an adult, and the other part of life goes, how can I be adult? I'm doing the same thing I've been doing since I was 8 years old. Um my my point of that being is, even if you love your job as much as Billy Joe Armstrong, that you're like, I look forward to it every day. When we look at these numbers on burnout, to have a passive income stream and you can look at those numbers and go, okay, how can I live on those numbers? Or if I want to work less, what does that mean? And when you've already got that established, and it's not, because I'll admit that's where I was. I hit the burnout point, and I'd done some stuff in real estate when I was younger. It didn't really go well. Instead of like you falling forward, I gave up. And we just said, okay, that's not for me, and threw it out and didn't do it for the next decade. And then when I started looking at the burnout and going, I don't know how much longer I can do this, is when I got serious about it. But if I'd stuck with it through that whole time and developed these passive income streams, I think I could have maybe, would have changed would have given me a lot more freedom in how I wanted to work. And I could say, okay, I'm going to change where I work, how much I work. I don't know. There's a lot of different things that gives you. And it's different than when you look at a net worth number, because you're always going, how long will that last? But
Hmm.
when you see there's a great, I think it was the first time I heard it, it was Peter Kim. I'm going to give Peter credit. He's a doctor who runs this passive income MD. Um, I say, if you're always looking at the bucket, you never know how long the bucket's going to last. But if you look at it like a stream, where you're building a stream, if you got enough water there to meet your daily needs as the stream runs through. And that's a powerful thing to see that passive income stream start to build up.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. And then having the freedom, and how doctors don't get burned out right out of med school is beyond me. It is so, from what I know, it is taxing. Every friend I've had that I've seen do it, I'm like, whoa, dude, that is a lot. So, um, as a side note, I saw Green Day at Great American Ballpark a few weeks ago. They were killer. So, yeah, they were great. But yeah, that stream, and have the flexibility if you're burned out and your money is making money for you, covering your lifestyle and making money in addition to that, which is a very real thing with net worth and passive income. Um, who's to say you don't retire early, and you spend a career doing what you love, retire early and enjoy that freedom of time and peace of mind and experiences, and if you get burnout and you find out that you love commercial real estate, then you transition, you make a great pivot, right? Like you did, Doc, like, to have options. Yeah, it's a powerful tool for sure.
Yeah, and once you start down the road, that's the amazing is I came into it thinking, and this is a doctor thing. I think that we feel like you need to go learn everything before you start, where a lot of the critical learning is once you start the journey, you find things that you didn't even know existed. I mean, there's the last, I saw Green Day in Minnesota right at the end of COVID. And one of my favorite things is out of it is they added it. It was three bands. Um, wow, it was Weezer and Fallout Boy. And then for just that show, they had an opening band that was like in the middle of the afternoon called the Interrupters, which are a punk band from LA. They're one of my favorite bands now. And if I hadn't gone to Green Day, I never would have heard of the Interrupters. So then I'm going to tie that back to the real estate that I started out in, in real estate, buying single family, buying a fourplex. And we talked about a little bit, then how do you scale that? I'm like, okay, this is too much work. Even if I hire a property manager, how many of these do I need to own before it starts having that impact? And if I hadn't done that, I don't know if I would have found out about syndications. And then once I started investing passively in syndications and was like, oh, then I went from multifamily to like, I like this stuff over here. Let's get some retail and industrial and office buildings in there. Let's, it's a totally different game. But I don't think I ever would have just started out and said, I want to own a piece of a Class A office building in a down market when everybody's fleeing that sector and they're selling it for 10 cents on the dollar of what it was pre-COVID. If I wasn't already in the game, it wouldn't have, it never would have crossed my mind. And I think that's, like you said, from the fire department, you did one thing and you're like, that didn't really work out. I'm going to do this thing. It's great that you were in an environment where it was like, well, I'll go try something else. And you got there.
Do you care about paying too much in taxes? And would you like to save more of your hard-earned dollars? Here's what we found. We found that most financial professionals have a one-size-fits-all solution. So the question is, would it make it easier for you to have someone tailor your tax solutions to your individual needs so you can keep more of your money and do what you want with it? That is exactly what we do at Excelstra.
As surgeons, we know the difference between routine surgery versus life-threatening interventions. And I want you to know that I've used Unicia and her team for my personal financial intervention, and I love the results. I would do you a disservice if I didn't recommend them to you.
We'd love to help you, so let's jump on a call and see how we can collaborate. Simply go to www.excelstra.com/McManus and book your free call today.
This has been an episode of Surgeon Syndicate. If you got value from this episode, you know other surgeons are hungry to become job optional, and you can help them by sharing this content today. Schedule a call and we can make a plan. Looking forward to having you with me on the next episode.